In this lesson, we'll explain the key differences in design workflow from Tinkercad to Fusion 360. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to identify Tinkercad software and explain the key differences in workflow between Tinkercad and Fusion 360. If you've been using Tinkercad and made your way to Fusion 360, congratulations. Fusion 360 is incredibly powerful, and it'll give you the design freedom you didn't even know you needed. If Tinkercad was your first experience with a 3D CAD program, you may be a little overwhelmed when you take that first step, but I'm here to help make that transition easy. During this course, we'll cover the basics and then make our way to more advanced topics, but let's get started by just pointing out some of the differences between Tinkercad and Fusion. 1. Both Tinkercad and Fusion 360 keep your data in the cloud and allow you to collaborate with other users. Fusion 360, though, provides extra power for management of who you invite to collaborate on your designs, and it has more control for versioning designs. But what does versioning mean? Well, Fusion 360 saves a new version of the file every time you save, so you never have to worry about losing your work or overwriting a file that you were working on with a friend. You are free to make as many changes as you want and still be able to go back to any of the saved versions. On top of that, Fusion 360 even has more tools for working together on files and exploring your designs. But we'll get into that a bit later. 2. You can create basic shapes like Tinkercad, but so much more. Fusion 360 is a sketch-based CAD program that also lets you create what are called primitives. These are the same things that you create in Tinkercad, but with a little bit of a twist. The difference is that you don't have to group them together to add or remove geometry. Fusion 360 uses what are called features. A feature is a tool that allows you to add, subtract, or modify geometry in some way. For example, if you want to make a box with a rounded edge in Tinkercad, you create a box shape. Then you adjust the roundness slider. But in Fusion 360, you can make the shape a number of different ways. For example, you can sketch a rectangle in 2D similar to what you would do on paper. You can then extrude that up into 3D, and you can use the fillet feature to round the edges. I know what you're thinking, this sounds like more work, but the benefit is that when you start creating those complex shapes and the complex geometry, you need that extra level of control. This is where the sketch-based modeling comes in really handy. Fusion also saves a step-by-step history of each feature or sketch you create. I don't want to get too deep into these topics here, but quickly, Fusion 360 also gives you what's called freeform modeling, or forms for short. This divides up bodies into a bunch of different points and lines and lets you push and pull these to make a very complicated and organic geometry. Just think of all the complex shapes that you can make in just a few minutes. 3. Because Tinkercad was initially designed for 3D printing, it has some limitations. In Fusion 360, the end goal can be a 3D print or some other manufacturing method like machining, injection molding, or really any way that you can make a part into reality. Fusion 360 allows you to create the basic parts, but you can also put together complex assemblies with motion, make photorealistic renders, animate them, make detailed 2D drawings, and even simulate them to make sure they're strong enough, and even program a computer-controlled machine to cut the parts. There are, of course, utilities or useful programs to send it right to a 3D printer, as well as just saving as an STL or an OBJ like you would in Tinkercad. 4. The last thing that you really need to know going into Fusion 360 from Tinkercad is how both products use workspaces. Tinkercad, on one hand, uses workspaces to prepare the model for different downstream workflows. One example of this would be the Minecraft workspace, where the model you created in the main editor gets converted into blocks and prepared in export for Minecraft. However, all of the modeling is done on the main workspace, where you have access to the group and adjusting tools and the content on the panel. However, in Fusion 360, you have toolbars across the top, and this gives you access to creating or removing geometry. Each toolbar belongs to a workspace. There's one workspace for modeling, which we call design. This allows you to create things like solid geometry, just like in Tinkercad. But there's also other workspaces for things like working with animations, creating detailed renderings, or starting your simulations. We'll go over how to navigate everything, but that's the big shift in how you access your tools, and probably the biggest thing you'll need to overcome. Fusion 360 has so much to offer, and once you learn the basics of how to get around and what the tools will do, you'll be creating your ideas in 3D in no time.